We wish Jesus had never said that. Sometimes I wish Jesus had never said that. All that bit about washing feet, about getting down. Oh, my knees. My hamstring is already balling up. My back, it hurts. We wish Jesus had never said this bit about washing feet. Isn't it kind of gross? We wish Jesus had never said this bit about washing feet because where are we taught in our world today? Probably not much different from Jesus' world. Where were we taught? Where are we taught? Where were they taught that we should make ourselves somebody's servant? That's not how we get to the top. That's not how we're successful. Telling somebody, acting as if someone is greater than us and we are the servant. Now, we're not biblical literalists in this place, most of us. So isn't this something that we could just sort of explain away? Isn't this one of those things that we could say is, well, it's more of a metaphor, right? Jesus wants us to be servants, but to really get down in there and get my hands wet and wash between somebody's toes. Most people don't really take it that far with foot washing, but you get my point. Do we really need to get in there to roll up our sleeves? Isn't it just a metaphor? Do we really need to do it? Actually do it? Well, we've decided that we do. We've decided that it is that important. If you don't come from a Church of the Brethren background, that's fine. But let me explain kind of a little bit about what happens when we wash feet. We make it part of a larger, essentially, reenactment of Jesus' Last Supper. We call it the love feast. And so we gather together, and we have some time at the beginning when we think about our relationships. We think about what we sometimes call this vertical relationship, our relationship with God. We assess that. How is that going? If there are places where we need to confess, we make that confession, and we know that we're forgiven. We assess our relationships more horizontally, we often say. Our relationships with one another, whether it's people here in the church, whether it's our neighbors, literally, next door where we live, whether it's our global neighbors, whether it's somebody at work, people in our family, how are those relationships doing? Sometimes the early brethren actually would not come to the table of Jesus. They would not come to the love feast unless all of their relationships were of good account. We're in the right place. There are times in love feasts, you may have seen this, or you may have heard of this, when people would actually get up from the tables and go to a brother or sister and ask forgiveness. I've seen that. It's a beautiful thing. Forgiveness asked for, forgiveness given. Clean hearts, ready to move forward. So we come and we assess our relationships. And then we do what we all love to do. We gather around the table to eat together. Sometimes we call this the agape meal, the love meal. We share with one another around the tables. It's a simple meal. It's the fellowship. It's being together that's more important. We share around those tables some food. And then we get to this foot washing part. Nothing all that crazy about it other than the deacon usually will stand up at the table. Well, just like the scripture said, wrap a towel around her or his waist and wash the feet of the person next to them. They'll share an embrace, and then they'll hand the towel off. And that person will wash the feet of the person next to them. And here we sit in round tables, so it's perfect. Everybody has their feet washed, and everybody washes someone else's feet. Then we wash our hands, and then we share in communion, Eucharist, much like we do here on a Sunday morning. We share that, then we sing a hymn, and we go out. We leave. And when we do it this time of year, it's often like we think of in terms of Jesus' last hours. We are prepared. We're prepared for his death and resurrection. That's what Love Feast is. But still, do we really need to wash feet? Well, we recognize that there are a few barriers when it comes to Love Feast in general. We recognize that not everybody has been to one before, and so you may not know how it works. And I don't know, Pam, do you know everything about Love Feast? Josh? No? Jason must. No. We don't know it all either. There's still much to learn, even just in the process of doing it. And we recognize that washing feet is a little strange. In our culture, we don't wash one another's feet. We don't touch one another's feet. We don't like to have our feet touched, many of us. And so, it's a little different. In Jesus' time, this was an act of hospitality that was often shared. If you would be wearing sandals, you would come in off of dusty roads and paths, and someone, if you were wealthy, you would have your servant do it. Someone would wash your feet if you were a guest in someone's home. But if you were hosting and you didn't have a servant, you might wash the person's feet as an act of hospitality. Kind of like taking their coat, making sure they're comfortable. A little different when we think about it like that. There are barriers that get in the way. But still, we've decided somehow, for some reason, that this is important enough that we want to keep doing it, actually doing it. Why is that? Well, someone said this week when I asked, why do you think it's important that we keep doing it? Someone said, well, it's important because we've done it, as Church of the Brethren, we've done it for so many years. We've done it for more than 300 years now. And I thought, that's pretty neat. Well, and even in the Catholic tradition, they've done it for eons. They do it a little bit differently, but it's a tradition that has been carried forward. And they said, think of all the places that people have washed one another's feet. Think about all the different moments in history where foot washing has happened and the different meanings it must have taken on, what it means to be a servant to somebody, for somebody, in these different locations throughout history and these different locations around the globe. That's pretty deep. And then we think about it in terms of how Jesus did it. Maybe it's just a symbol, but definitely is it a symbol that is meaningful. The idea that we would act as servants to one another. The idea that in this world where you want to be at the top, and again, nothing has changed since Jesus' time in this regard, to say that you will be a servant is a radical notion. That you're going to do that voluntarily. That you're going to do something where you're going to give up power. And you're going to be in a position where somebody is going to serve you as well. And that's just as uncomfortable for many as actually being a servant. You are going to receive an act of servanthood. Symbolism is powerful. I heard this week on the radio that it was an author who posited that as a country, we are addicted, literally use this word, addicted to self-righteousness and anger. Do you see this? Do you feel it? I know sometimes I can fall victim to, oh, those idiots over there. Those knuckleheads don't know what they're doing. How could they? They're so stupid. I've got the answers, though, right? It's a lot harder to say that from here. It's infinitely harder if someone is in this chair. For me to say that I know all the answers, when Jesus was in a position similar to this, washing the feet of his disciples, we're a community that says we want to practice, put in practice, peace, service, and openness to all. We are we together. And when we serve together, I don't know how we could be any more us. I could talk a lot more about Love Feast, but what I want to do is I want to invite Pastor Jason and Barry Garman to come forward. And we will be witnesses to this sacred and holy act. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set for you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Love Feast is not this Thursday, but it's the next. It's at 6:30. We will meet here to begin. There will be tables set up downstairs, prepared by our deacons. Opportunities where you can sit with same-gender tables, if that's what you prefer, or with family or friends at mixed-gender tables. There will be hand-washing stations if it's physically impossible for you to get down and wash feet. There will be opportunity for us to come together as community in humility and love and service. I hope to see you all there.